again to the Open Mic Writers in Their Own Words, the show where every episode I talk to my fellow writers to learn a little bit more about them and the work that they do, easy for me to say, and hopefully how their experiences could help you on your own writing journey. Now, before I introduce my guest, I'd like to take just a moment, please, and ask you to hit the subscribe button so you don't ever miss a future episode. And that's whether you are on YouTube or listening on a podcast platform. If you like what you hear or see today, I would also ask that you maybe tell a friend about it, especially if that friend has any interest in writing, because this is a show where, for the awesome price of nothing, you can learn a lot about the writing and publishing game, and it is a complex industry. Uh, it's also the best way for endeavors like this one to gain an audience, is if you tell a friend. So I appreciate a review, I appreciate a like, and I appreciate you telling somebody about it. That'd be great. Um, Now, for the show, if you are a regular viewer or listener, you know that while I focus on writers, I have on occasion had literary agents or other folks from the publishing industry. In that vein, today I am welcoming back my own literary agent, Liz Kracht of the Kim Cameron Agency. Now, aside from putting up with me and a host of other pain in the ass clients, Liz is also an author and an editor in her own right. And she's got one of the really great, what I think is one of the essential craft books out there called The Author's Checklist. We're going to talk about that a little bit here in just a moment. And we're also going to talk about her foray into her own fiction. So, Liz Kroc, welcome back to the open mic. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm doing pretty well, all things considered.
Now, I'm going to ask you guys for one favor here. Liz is gracious enough to come on the show, and I appreciate that immensely. But please do not bombard her with a bunch of, come-ons for agents. We're going to talk a little bit about how you find clients. Um, I feel sorry for agents because as soon as somebody knows you're an agent, you're always going to be like, the most sought after person at the conference or whatever, because so many writers are so desperate to get an agent. I get it. I've been there. So I appreciate you taking some time and putting yourself out there to come on my show and risking that. So um, appreciate that very much. I also did not realize until I was doing a little research today and realized it's been 4 years since you were last on the show. And two things got me about that. One is it's been way too long. And two, man, I've been doing this a long time. I didn't realize how long I actually been doing this. But anyway, I know what's changed for me over the last 4 years. What's maybe changed for you during that time? Has anything major in terms of your work as an agent changed since 2022?
2022, was that how long ago it was? It feels like nothing has changed exactly. I always feel like I'm so behind in my reading, for my client reading and very hard to get to my submissions for that reason. Um, And I always think I'm like right around the corner from getting caught up, and then my authors all are like, I have my next book ready, So I feel like I keep making plans for things to be very different, more streamlined, but it doesn't ever seem to happen. So I
Well,
guess not much
now
has changed.
I of course, my genre is crime fiction, but you rep both fiction and nonfiction.
Mhm.
Um, has the balance of any of that changed? Have you started to lean more in one direction or the other? Where are you at in terms of just the overall volume of stuff you and type of things that you wrap these days?
I think it's still pretty even. I mean, I think, like I said, I have many clients whose books I've sold, and so I'm constantly getting new projects from them. So, in that way, things haven't really changed in terms of the balance of what I represent. But I'm always looking for, I'd like to do more nonfiction, actually, it's what I tend to read, for personally, but I don't always get the projects that I make bids for, or I don't often come across things that I'm interested in. So there were actually through social media, Instagram, I think I put some feelers out for some nonfiction projects with some of the influencers out there. And oftentimes the influencers don't know that they are interested in writing a book. Sometimes I've hit them too early, but then once they take off, of course, they get book deals. And so, so I've tried to represent a little bit more nonfiction, but so far haven't run across that many projects or haven't landed some of the projects I've been interested in. So I'd say it's probably still about half and half or three-quarters fiction and a quarter nonfiction. But I'm interested in more nonfiction, like finding more nonfiction.
On the nonfiction front, that makes me think of something because oh, because nonfiction, your platform going in is so much more important, really, even than fiction. Though I know it's important for fiction people too, to some extent. But in nonfiction, you have to be a known expert or what have you. You have to have a platform. But I also know a lot of those people don't write and they're not, so when you're looking at nonfiction stuff, are you having to factor in ghostwriters or, is that much of a thing? I mean, I ask because I know some people who've done quite well as ghostwriters, mostly writing celebrity stuff. But I'm curious about, other aspects of nonfiction and how much ghostwriters might get used there and how much that might impact anything that you do.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic because ghostwriters, like I remember working with a ghostwriter who I was representing, and I got very close to getting him a deal, but the Penguin editor said he doesn't have any platform because by nature he was ghostwriting for all of these self-help um, writers, I don't know if we call them writers, influencers maybe at that but he was writing oddly, 95% sometimes of the content of some of these major best-selling um, self-help type influencer type people. So that I was really shocked. I was like, so it's actually this guy who's writing all that content, not these guys. And he could write on any subject, Buddhism, spirituality, meditation. He could kind of write on anything. So it was really hard for me. I wasn't able to get him a deal for his parody that he wrote on the self-help industry because he had no platform. He was by nature, writing anonymously. And so but more recently, I've wanted to work with a couple of people who, were kind of influencer or I would say minor celebrities or celebrities of the past. And so I was kind of hoping for a ghostwriter to come my way. And our agency doesn't employ a ghostwriter. But I managed to find a writer who kind of wanted to get more experience at ghostwriting, who is willing to kind of work with a couple of writers and be paid on the back end or be paid up front. And so he's been, I haven't been able to sell those two books, but I haven't gone out with them yet. So we're going to see how that goes. But I was really glad to have him because these were two people whose books I really felt that I might be able to sell or who had stories that I thought were important to try to get out there. So I kind of got lucky in finding somebody who, is a ghostwriter and, but a beginning one, right? And wanted to kind of cut his teeth, so to speak. But yeah, it's like one of those things like larger agencies probably have ghostwriters in-house or the publishers do. Our agency doesn't. I just happened to kind of call one in and manage to find one. But so I only have but they also need to be paid too, right? So
Right.
it always comes down to this thing about money. It's like we all need to make a living. And so I have him working on two projects, I think that I hope at some point to be able to sell, but they're both a little bit, they're not quite ready yet. Um, so I'm kind of
Well,
open to that, but
it's fascinating to me because, like I say, I know most of the ghostwriters that I am familiar with, and I have a very good friend on the East Coast who has made a good living for years, uh, ghosting, but mostly for CEO types,
mhm.
which is real common. But and celebrities are the other ones. I have another friend down in Southern California who's done quite well with those too. But I hadn't thought about the influencer class and the self-help class. So. If the books got to get written by somebody, so I will keep my ear to the ground, to the ground for you a little bit.
Yeah.
I also, what is what does the industry look like right now? I mean, we've gone through COVID and we've gone through economic ups and downs, and of course, right now we're living through some incredibly fraught times economically and socially, politically. Um, I know sometimes those things have big impact on the publishing industry, which always feels to me like it's on a razor's edge anyway. Um, how do you see the publishing industry's stability? How do you see its wants and needs right now? We've seen big shrinkage of the industry in the last 25 years. I mean, how do you assess its health and well-being as we sit here today?
I'm not sure that I have my head, into manuscripts most of the time, and I'm, as we all maybe are experiencing too with politics today, we're kind of like gotta kind of put our blinders up and keep doing what we do. Obviously, we have to make changes as things change. I think what I'm noticing, I mean, I think I just saw something recently where there were a lot of layoffs at Simon and Schuster. I personally feel like maybe I mean, I don't know if this is true or the case, but I wonder if we're going to have a downturn sort of in the economy, just kind of based on things that are happening now. But in 2009 when I got into the industry, that's when I think there was page counts. I think what we were seeing was like publishers were more interested in lower page counts, or word counts, projects that were not so large. Now I think since that time, projects then suddenly it was okay to have a 90,000 word thriller, but before that, they were kind of interested in shorter thrillers, these types of kind of micro things that you notice. And so I don't know if any of that is occurring right now, but just noticing all the layoffs, and how hard it's been for myself and other agents to sell projects. I think things are happening, right? Obviously, there's not as much, I think, activity. But honestly, I haven't been studying it. I just sort of keep doing what I'm doing, keep trying to keep focused on that. But I have heard from other agents, basically agencies, that it has been really difficult to sell. However, I think in our agency, from what I understand from my boss, Kimberly, my colleague Dorian is making some great sales. She works mostly in the fantasy and sci-fi, I think, realm and young adult, and she's doing really well. So it's not to say that everything is, tight. So obviously there's some money being spent and people that are doing really, really well. So.
Well, I know, first of all, that's good to hear. You know, are there genres that you think maybe do better than others? Or, have you seen any evolution, and I guess, in how the markets for genre fiction? I mean, I know romance will probably always be, you know, what romance has always been, right? But I feel like crime fiction, what I write, and thrillers and stuff, maybe they kind of go up and down a little bit or whatever. What's your perspective on that kind of genre fiction? Am I right about romance, number one, I guess, but do you see fluctuation in the popularity of the other genres?
I think, again, this isn't, I don't represent romance. I do some commercial, what I'd call women's. I'm not sure if it moves into the romance category, but like I think obviously there's always going to be a market for that. I did have a romance project that I tried to sell that I thought was really good, and that did not sell. So I was surprised. One of my better projects recently, and another really good mystery that also did not sell, and went to even some really highly developed editors that were former I think Penguin Random House editors, like acquiring editors that were like, this is ready to go, went out with it, could not sell it. So it's really hard to know because also, like many authors, we don't get a lot of feedback necessarily from the editors telling us what the problem was. In one particular case, the editor said that they'd read every word of it, but still there was just something they couldn't really pinpoint exactly what it was that wasn't working for them. And so now that author has written a new book, a new standalone that I'm going to try and go out with, and let's see if that, does any better. But um, I mean, all I can say is that I see some sales, some really good sales happening. Like I said, with Dorian in the science fiction fantasy realm, probably fantasy more specifically. I think horror is also coming up. And I don't represent horror, my boss does, but it seems like many editors are asking for horror in a way that they had not before. So that definitely seems, like something that's kind of active. But, like anything, the industry wants certain things and then they get a lot of that certain thing and then they move on to wanting something else. So I think romantasy became a big thing within the last maybe year or something, and now editors are saying they're not looking for that, and so or they're not, or maybe they feel a little bit like they've had enough of it. Not that they're not looking, because I think even when it came to like vampire stuff back in the day, there were always going to be the people that are going to look for that, but then, in more of a general sense, many editors would, said, okay, enough, so, there's always the exception to the rule that's going to be looking for exactly what you're writing, probably. But
But it's why you should not chase the market or whatever you think the market is, because the I think the thing that shocks a lot of new writers, and I'm sure you've heard this before, is how long it takes. Your book could get accepted today by Random House, and it'll be 2027 before, or 2028 maybe before it comes out.
I
So,
think that surprises a lot of people. They don't realize the time it takes to actually, get the book through production, so and a lot of people don't have patience anymore. They don't have patience for it.
right.
So
Um, so I have to ask you a question about AI, and I know before we came on, you were saying you didn't really have a lot of information about the use of artificial intelligence, but it has become a big concern for a lot of authors. So I wonder if you're getting asked about this at all, about, you know, protecting their intellectual property, or, how do you ever see someone where it looks like maybe they used AI to write a pitch to you? I mean, have you thought that maybe someday you might be asked to represent an AI client the way, there was this artificial intelligence actress, I think it was, that was created in Hollywood that was creating a big stir for a bit. Um, if at all, has AI started to play a role in anything that you're dealing with as an agent?
I think the most recent, I think we're all really careful, and we're having conversations about it as things come up. We're all very careful. So, for example, I would protect my clients the same way I would want to protect my own writing. I would never feed any of my own writing, except for maybe some resume writing or something, into like ChatGPT. Like, even if I had my own personal account, just because of the way that those terms and conditions are formed, even if they don't necessarily steal your information, they are selling information. I think we all know that at this point. Your data is not private, no matter what. And so for me, I would never pipe anything into ChatGPT. I wouldn't put any, I might put some of my own stuff if I was writing a cover letter, because cover letters are hard to write. So I might use it for that sort of purpose, or for resume reorganization, that kind of thing. But putting my own writing in there, no. I wouldn't even do it for NaNoWriMo. So that was a novel writing month. They asked you to put your stuff into, a box to show that you had the word count, right? I think there was some feature like that early on, and I wouldn't even do that. I would just take the gratification of having done the 50,000 words or whatever it was. Um, but now we're being approached by, like, we were approached by a company not long ago, and had a conversation with them where they were offering a service um, to allow you to evaluate manuscripts for a certain fee, a certain number for a certain fee. And, I don't think AI is going away. It's just a matter of kind of figuring out like what's your positioning going to be around it. And I think the company, like it was a really interesting kind of concept and company, but I wasn't 100% sure that so the idea was that you could pipe in a manuscript, it would within a very short period of time, it would um, send you kind of an editorial letter or report on the manuscript. And so um, I just wasn't sure that the anything that you put in there would be protected, like that it would that the terms and conditions of the companies that were being used would truly protect that writing, or that author's writing. And so I think that's kind of what it comes down to is like, are these manuscripts going to be used? Is the writing going to be used? Is this data going to be sold? I mean, I think unless we feel really secure that a writer's information is not going to be used in any way, or that our information is not going to be used in any way, like I can't imagine using it.
Yeah.
I guess is what it comes down to. Like I'd have to be willing to be my own guinea pig, basically, because I don't think um, I'm curious about its abilities, but only in a way in which we know it's 100% protected, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I just, I understand. Like I've talked with a lot of writers who have used it to help flesh out or generate story ideas, or they've used it to maybe to edit, like you noted, a cover letter or a pitch letter of some kind. And and I think those are fine uses. My wife uses Chat GPT a lot in instead of Google to search out stuff. But even then, she finds all kinds of mistakes. It'll say this, the other thing, and you find out, well, none of that's right. And so I don't know. I just think
I think
I
I
don't use it for anything at all. I used it for a little bit for some stuff at work where to quickly put short pieces of stuff like through a particular style. I basically created a style guide, but I just stopped using it because I'd rather edit it myself, right? Things change in my world, so um, yeah, I completely understand too the concern about stuff getting stolen because they have clearly done that. So
Yeah, yeah, we
um,
know they've done that. I think I felt like I read a manuscript not that long ago that was the first time I ever wondered if it was put through, if it came or was developed somehow through Chat GPT, because in a way, like there was the emotionality of it was missing. And so I kind of had this moment where I was wondering whether, this is the first time I'd run across a manuscript that had maybe gone through some AI program. I like to think I'd be able to notice, and I think I would, but it may just be, because sometimes there are people that are writing that don't have a lot. They're not strongly emotional people, or if they are, it's not completely apparent in their writing. So sometimes they miss moments where a character would have a reaction emotionally, and on the page it doesn't show in any way. Like there's no emotional arc, for the character. So that's kind of what I think would be missing in an AI manuscript. But some people, like I said, they aren't emotionally I don't know what the right word is, but they're not necessarily emotional people, like very emotional people.
yeah,
So sometimes you can get manuscripts that look like that too.
I want to I want to pivot here because I noted that you have what I think is one of the really good uh, craft books out there, and craft books comes in all kinds of styles where you can it seems like every great writer has one, but I think yours is, I think, one of the really valuable ones because the author's checklist is exactly what it sounds like. Short, very digestible chapters of what you should do as an author before you submit your stuff to an agent, but after it goes to an agent, maybe going to a publisher, what have you. But I found it to be really helpful because you point out some things that when you've looked at your own manuscript 1,000 times, man, you just miss stuff. And one of the more helpful things that you point out, it was just really simple, was the use of adverbs and adjectives. And oh my God, I, I, that prompted me to do a word search on my manuscript, which was 85,000 words. And I had used one adverb like 2,500 times.
Which one was it?
Oh, I don't
Slowly,
remember. I don't
quickly.
remember now, but I took care of all that before you got my submission copy. But I went through and found several like that, or even not just adverbs. Other words, or you had a character, like maybe you have a character. I know one thing that I used the word pondered a couple of hundred times. I was like,
Really?
okay, which so often is, it's an indication of you writing at different times, right? If
Yeah,
you sat down and wrote something straight through, you probably wouldn't do that. But because you're writing it over the course of months or sometimes years, and hell, half the
right.
time you don't remember what happened in chapter one. Now you're on chapter 29. You might use that same term, and so I just think your book is a really great way for authors to catch themselves with easily fixable mistakes or patterns before they go to somebody like you who will then say, I see this pattern and I have to reject this. And so, how is the book doing? There was no question in all that. That's just me giving you some praise for the book. But the question, I guess, is how has the book done for you since then? And, do you have any? We're going to talk about your fiction in just a moment here, but um, what's the feedback been like on the book? And, any other thoughts on that particular project?
I love my little writing book. I have to say, in case people want to see, this is kind of what it looks like on the
Yes.
cover there. But it's my like I'm really proud of that book because I feel like I got all the advice into it that I had given as a freelancer or as an agent. Like I feel like I sat down and got every single piece, and it still holds true. So a lot of the feedback I give to my writers or to my freelance clients, comes directly from the book. It's always hitting the same topics. Every now and then there's something really nuanced that is interesting that comes up, but generally, I feel like it addresses every single piece of advice I've ever given. So I'm really proud of it. And it is, I get it came out in 2020, so we're getting on 6 years. I hope my publisher doesn't like turn back my rights or anything until after I get my fiction out. Like I'd be happy. I wanted to do that much earlier than at this point. Um, but I think it's probably not sold as many copies as I would have hoped, maybe. I don't know if I think maybe somewhere around 2,500 or 3,000. So it's not a bestseller by any stretch. But maybe, who knows, if my fiction comes out, maybe it'll point in that direction. The fiction project that I'm working on now is it's sort of slightly connected. The reason that the way that I came up with my fiction project was kind of trying to create a tie-in project. And it's not exactly a direct tie-in, but it's kind of close. And so, it's publishing related. And so anyway, I mean, the book it didn't become a bestseller or anything, but I'm super proud of it. And I do get a lot of positive feedback from writers. And early in the publication of the book, I got many pet pictures with the book, which I loved. We get dogs and cats and all
Right.
sorts of animals with the book, which was fun. So yeah, that's how it's doing. It's still out there. It's still available for publication, and I'm hoping to sell more copies always. So
Well, I'm going to give you another plug for it here because I really mean this sincerely. Everybody in my particular writers group has a copy. In fact, we were
um,
just talking about it a couple weekends ago when we met. Um, and it is really beyond just the novel. I'm not allowed to speak to specifics yet, but I had a piece of short fiction of mine that just got accepted for an anthology, and that's all I can say at the moment. But I will say I used a lot of the things from the author's checklist in going through my short fiction too. I even use some of those things. I'm a reporter and editor by trade. For those of you who are new to this show, I'm the editor in chief of a publication that covers the California State Capitol, and so I have to now edit a lot of different writers. Many of them are young, so they're just learning some of the basic things. Some are better than others, and so there's a lot of stuff there that I try to impart upon them. Just a really great, the same way elements of style is kind of mandatory, I think, for a lot of people getting into it. This is something very and Stephen King's book on writing, I think, and I think Liz's book is in that group too, where you it's just again, it's easily digestible stuff that can help make you a better writer much faster. So there you go. That's my commercial for you, Liz. But
Thank you. I
I'm
appreciate that. I read your
yeah,
short story, by the way, and we'll have to talk about that
absolutely.
offline so we don't expose
Yes,
it.
yes, yes, yes.
But yeah.
So let's talk about your fiction though, because as you noted, as I've noted and you've noted, you are now working on fiction. Tell me what you can. There may be stuff you can't say, but give us a little insight into what it is you're working on.
Um, I'm not going to give away my title because I'm afraid, like as we talked about, I'm afraid to lose that title before I get it published. So, because it's a pretty catchy title. But it is kind of a parody on the publishing industry. And so, it's set in New York in a publishing house. And a movie comp to it would be like the series Younger, I think was out there. Once I saw that, I recently saw that and I was like, "Oh no, like this has so many, so many similarities to the book that I've written." But I started the book just because I came up with I wanted to come up with a tie-in idea, sort of like the concept of um what's that word? It's the pregnancy book, What to Expect When You're
Oh
Expecting.
yeah.
That was a nonfiction book. It started out as a nonfiction book and then moved over to the movie, to TV film. And so I was like, well, I should do that because I feel like any writer should always be working in all genres. I think every form of writing informs every other form of writing. And so that was the idea, was like, how could I come up with a book that is, it kind of ties into the nonfiction book here. And so that was my idea. And I went through my MFA program and got it started. Actually, it started on the screenplay side first, and then I started working on the fiction side. And I'm not a fiction writer, so I honestly don't know how you guys do it. I think by nature, I want to be writing like nonfiction, not spirituality, but like, nature stuff. Like that's kind of my thing. But I had this idea, and it was the idea that got me out of my MFA program. And so it's basically a project set with an unreliable narrator. It's a parody in set in publishing, and I think the biggest difficulty in getting this published is going to be the fact that it's a third person omniscient narrator, which many, I think, editors and people in general do not like. So it's kind of old style, I guess, old school. Crazy Rich Asians, I think, is told from third person omniscient, and there are other popular books also out there that are told from this point of view. But I think that's going to be the trickiest part. I don't know that I'm doing it, super well. Right now it's novella length, so it's probably more novella than it is novel. But and there's a book within the book. So I have like a 4 chapter thriller that's embedded into the book. So it's a little bit of a wild ride, quite honestly. But we'll see what happens.
That sounds kind of ambitious. I love it. You know, I it is anything that challenges you a little bit is scary. It really is. It's kind of scary. And we were talking earlier about finding all these little things that you miss and all this stuff. And man, when you're doing anything that you're going to put out there to be judged by the powers that be. It's scary. And so I'm kind of curious, you've been on this side of the equation for so long. Now you're going to be back out there on the other side of the equation. Are you going to be looking for an agent? Are you, how are you going to put this out there for publication? I don't imagine you can agent yourself. So how does this work?
I think I am going to look for an agent who, with my nonfiction book, I only sent it to one publisher that had a writing, section within it's where Jeff Herman's guide was published at New World Library. I sent it out there 4 months later. The editor there asked me if it was still available. Didn't even try to go to bigger publishers, which is sort of weird, as an agent. Why did I do that? So I think with this book, it's like I think I'm gonna try and get an agent for it. I'm definitely gonna try and get an agent for it. If it doesn't work, if I have some friend agents, I'm not expecting they would take me on unless they really felt passionately about the project. But I'm gonna hit up some people that I know, and or maybe try some, big New York agents, see what happens. And if I am not able to get an agent, then I will just start shopping the book myself and see what happens. I think some authors do that and come to agents with deals already, so I'm not afraid to do that if I need to. And obviously, I've had a lot of rejection in my life, both as an agent and as a woman. So I'm kind of like, I can handle it. Yeah, so I'm not worried about that. I mean, I guess it is vulnerable, though. You're vulnerable, right, with your writing. And I know this is a project that not everybody's gonna like. So, I'm just gonna have to see how it goes. But, I have to take my own advice that I give to other writers, right? I have to give it 6 months to a year on my own of trying to get an agent
Yeah.
or trying to get a publisher. And I don't have any idea about self-publishing, but let's see where I am a year or 6 months from now. Um,
Yeah, again, it's another one of those things I think you learn when you've been in this any length of time. It's you got to play the long game. I mean, if you're not, I mean, look at me here. I've been working on the same damn manuscript for literally decades. It went into mothballs for a long time. I won't bore everybody with my story because they've heard it before, but life has happened, things changed. It is a million times different than the first thing I wrote. It took forever to even get out of my own way and everything. Okay, and then I'll now, we're a lot closer to the end than to the beginning from when I started. But it's just that's so much of what you got to do in this business, though. You just have to remember it's a product. If you're trying to sell, again, if the only person you care about seeing it is your mom, write whatever, print it at Kinko's and give it to her. But if you want a publishing house to do it, it's a product, and you got to remember it's a product, and they're not going to do it unless they think they can sell it. So you have to play that part of the game, and it's hard for a lot of artists to think of it that way, but well, you don't have to, but you may not sell anything if you don't. So, good
Well, and
luck to you.
that might be something I'll be facing. Like if somebody wants me to pull it out of third person omniscient, I'm like, I don't know if I know how to tell the story another way. And and I know that you have had that experience, right? You're tasked with changing your point of view, and I have another writer that is also changing a book from first to third person because of an editor's advice, and so it's just like, okay, can I do that? And it really stretches you as a creative person to have to sit down and figure it out. Like I've given that advice too to some of my authors, like, I don't know how you're going to do it, but I need you to get that inciting incident in the first chapter. And it might mean that you just have to sit on the couch for a couple hours and think about it because that's kind of what it takes is like, how can you start your story further in? And still get all the characterization and the setting development and everything with a brand new start. And so that's the hard part about being creative is sometimes you're being asked to do something that you really actually don't know how to do and you have to think it out and figure it out.
Oh
So
yeah. Well, and I want on that thing because to me that really leads to something I want to talk about, which was the use of outside editors. Now, you used to do a lot of your own editing, and these days I know your schedule doesn't really allow it. And so, full disclosure here, so Liz referred me to an editor that she's sent some other folks to. I had the brilliant idea with one iteration of my manuscript that because I fell in love with Don Winslow's writing, and I admit it, I fell too much in love with it. Let this be a lesson to you. I've already face planted for you, so you don't have to do it. And he did a great first person present tense version of several of his books, and I said, I love that. Oh my God, I love that. And so I did it with mine, and look, it was fine, but yes, that's the first thing. Andra came back with this. No, this isn't working at all. You're going to lose everybody with this. So I just finished doing the full revision of tense. I am now rereading from beginning to end my entire book again, and finishing, finding every outlet. I'm doing my own copy line editing this time, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll talk about this more off camp. We're done here, but I'm actually getting close to being getting you a new copy. But point being was she told me flat out, this is going to be probably roll up your sleeves, go to work thing, and you may not want to do it, but this is what it's going to take. And you can't be so ego involved in things that you don't listen to advice from people who know what the fuck they're talking about. And so I sat down and I just started grinding it out. And now everybody in my writers group has been saying, "Oh, this reads so much better."
Wow.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Well, you could have told me that a year and a half ago, but okay. But anyway, um, it is imperative in this thing too that you listen to folks that have, I mean, obviously you don't want people to talk you out of something you really believe in, but you have to, again, it's a product and you have to be willing to listen when people are telling you why something's not working. And so, long-winded lead in, you have to talk with writers all the time and tell them why something isn't working, or they pitch you and you have to reject them, whatever the case may be. What's the Maybe what is the worst thing for you that writers do in terms of working with an agent or even just in approaching an agent? What advice do you give to people, for trying to get your attention and to have you consider a project? And then maybe as a client, how maybe that relationship changes and what you expect from them and what they should expect from you.
There's a lot there.
Yeah, yeah, I
As I
know
was
it's a very
listening to you
long-winded
talk,
question.
I was thinking about how I love working with writers that know the industry, that know how hard it is, that know um just that know like that are able to take advice and that can hear advice, I guess. Because I do run across, so I've had to have all kinds of conversations. So I'm going to have a difficult conversation with a freelance client of mine soon. I think it's going to require a lot more work than I think he's prepared to do. Um, but we're going to see about that. And then I've also had a recent kind of conversation with one of my longtime authors that, like we just didn't have the same perspective on a project and we decided to kind of part ways after many, many years. And so it's kind of coming down to those kind of conversations. I do not want to, I do believe that people, if somebody feels passionate about something, then that they get to make a choice about that, right? So if I feel passionately that I'm not going to be able to sell your manuscript because of the beginning or because some things aren't working for me throughout. But you also feel equally passionate that it's ready to go out the door because you've heard that from an editor, or you've heard it from your writing group. I'm going to we're going to probably part ways on those kind of views, right? And I believe that if you feel, I mean, how many people have been rejected that just persevered and believed in their project and found a home for it and got it published and it became the bestseller? We've all heard those stories, you know? So I would never want to get in the way of somebody who really passionately felt that their work didn't need change, that it was ready to go. If I disagree with that, then I don't fault that person for wanting to part ways, right? So I'm because what do I know ultimately in the grand scheme of the universe? But, again, I'm not going to try to sell something that I don't think I'll be able to sell because it takes a lot of time and energy. It takes me 15 hours to read, or maybe 20 hours to read and give feedback to somebody. And it doesn't happen all in 1 week. And so, like for me, I'm getting to that point where I really need to focus my time, because a lot of projects I work on, a number of them I have not been able to sell. And um, so I'm, like I really feel like writers get to choose what, we all have choice, and writers get to choose. But I really love working with writers who really kind of understands how the industry works, because then they tend to respect me and my time more. They take feedback better.
Yeah.
They'll do whatever they have to because they have a dream and they have a goal of getting published traditionally. And not everybody has that goal, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I have had the recent experience with two writers who basically challenged me on my calendar and my time, like why can't you find the time to look at my manuscript? And it's just like it's not something I can, you know well, it's basically it's not for somebody to challenge my calendar and how I schedule my time. And so so I've had to push back and just say, like, you don't get to, you're not in charge of my calendar and my time. I'm sorry, like that's all there is to it. So that's really hard and challenging, when you work really hard for people and you get challenged basically, because it's a hard, as an agent, it's really hard. We don't get paid until we sell manuscripts. That's why I have to do developmental editing on the side. So
That's so crazy to me too. I
yeah.
mean, I get it to some extent, because it does take time. What we were talking about earlier, it's a long, slow process if you're going to go the traditional route. If you're that hung up on it, then go publish it yourself and do all this work yourself, and you'll see why it's. I yeah, I kind of bristle at that whole idea. If you want to do this, this is the process. It's interesting too. I have this conversation with my interns that I have every year because I usually have at least two. And right now I have three interns. And I always, they're always want to go gangbusters to write about a piece of legislation or something. They want to go start talking to lawmakers. And I always tell them, slow down. You need to learn everything you can about this particular issue. The lawmaker is the last person you talk to, or that source is the last person you talk to, not the first, because there's no way you can go in there and be prepared to have the kind of conversation you need to be able to write this effectively. You need to know as much about this as you can beforehand. You need to learn about the history of this issue, and you need to, because I guarantee you, there's nothing new under the Capitol dome. That bill may have been around for 10 years. I've seen it. So you need to understand all that context before you start talking to the current person, because you're only going to get this much time, right? And to me, I feel the same way about this industry. Everything you just said. I mean, we've all screwed up. I mean, I've pitched editors way too early and their agents and stuff. We've all done it.
Too. I've done it too. I'm like, look at this early draft of my first chapter, and I'm like, why did I do that? I know
Yeah.
better.
But you think after you've done it a little while, or you're bothering to listen to people who've been doing it for a little while, that you learn not to do stuff like that. And you certainly, man, if there's anything I've learned is to have mad respect for the time of agents. 'Cause how many pitches do you think feel like you get on a regular basis, like in a month?
I mean, I'm not open to submissions anymore unless I meet people through conferences or pitch sessions. And I was doing several of those per year. I think this year I'm gonna scale back on that. So I'm doing Left Coast Crime in February. I'm in person. I'm gonna do Thriller Fest in New York in person. I haven't done that for a while. And I'm gonna do a Writer's Digest boot camp thing. But I think I'm gonna just so that I can get caught up and not disappoint people. I think I'm gonna kind of, not do as many pitch things this year. Um, but if people manage to get through to my email, I don't reject people if they, find their way in. It's not that hard to figure out what my email is. Um, so basically, I don't really get, a lot of submissions anymore unless I do conferences. So I mean, I still have hundreds in my inbox, but I don't get them on the daily basis anymore unless they've come through a conference. So yeah, I mean, I think that that's part of the reason the AI thing came up recently through another person in publishing that kind of talked to us was they're trying to figure out how to help agents manage their submissions because it's really hard to get through submissions, basically. And
Yeah.
so the idea was like, how can we help agents move through their submission or their inbox? And that got into a really interesting conversation too, because I asked this person who also works for a mainstream publisher, I was like, I was like, do you think that agents are reading full manuscripts before they submit to you? And he was like, no. He was like, we get manuscripts that, that agents are taking on manuscripts and where they've only read like 50 pages. And I was like, it was like, I'm doing this wrong then, because like they're taking on things that they have read 50 to 100 pages and they're like, okay, looks good. Let's go out with it. And so I was really surprised by that. I did not know that that was what other agents are doing. And maybe it's not all agents, but it's quite a number of them. And I think now, from what I understand, there are over 1,000 agents now, book publishing agents. And so I don't think it used to be that many. Kimberly always says there weren't that many back in the day, but now there are a lot. Quite a number. I mean, 1,000, I mean, could be more, right? But so so yeah, like I was really surprised to hear that people weren't reading full manuscripts at all.
Yeah,
So
that's really interesting to me.
well,
Wow.
and then that creates a glut, right, in the marketplace when you haven't even read something, because we all know that something can take a left turn like 150 pages in, right? It's like suddenly it takes a weird left turn and it's like into fantasy or, it does, manuscripts can do wild things sometimes. So I don't know, like I was kind of shocked by that and I was like, huh, but
Yeah,
as I,
the point is you have to stick the landing.
yeah,
And
yes.
a book that doesn't stick the landing leaves everybody very unsatisfied. That's interesting. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, hope I know the publishers are reading them, but it's got to be creating an unusual amount of glut, in the inboxes if people aren't if the agents aren't reading the books. And
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
so, yeah.
Well, look, I don't want to keep you too long, so I always like to close with what I think is a fun question. Hope it's a fun question. I mean for it to be a fun question. And there's a little bit of a theme here. You will probably pick it up pretty quickly, but if not, we'll talk about it right at the end. But I could put you together with one of the following three people for
Oh no.
whatever, dinner, drinks, conversation, kayaking on the ocean, whatever you want. But you can only choose one. Who would you choose and why? And the three options I'm going to give you are uh, Roald Dahl, Ian Fleming, or Julia Child. I could put you together with one of those three people to have whatever kind of conversation event you want to have. Who would you choose?
I think I would choose Julia Child. Um, and I don't know. In fact, I was just talking with somebody about the book that was, and I can't remember the name of the title right off the top of my head, but was the two different timeline book. But anyway, yeah, I think she would be a very interesting person to spend time with. And I remember, I can't recall things off the top of my head right now, but I just remember watching something about her and being very charmed by her. And so I was very, interested to know kind of more about her as a person. So
The
I think,
people that knew her seemed to all really like her. They all seemed to be
yeah,
very, very long term, very, very devoted to her. So that tells you a
yeah.
lot about somebody.
Yeah, so I think I would be most interested to spend some time with her, and see what she's all about.
Well, I'll tell you, if anyone missed the theme there, obviously they're all authors, but the real theme is that all three of them were also intelligence officers, spies slash spooks, either in British intelligence or American intelligence. In fact, Julia was and her husband were both part of the original OES in World War II. So not really a spy herself, but she did work for the spy agency. And Ian Fleming and Roald Dahl were both intelligence officers in the British military, and were, I think, in the case of Fleming and Dahl, they both were actual spies at one point or another. So that was the through line there, that they were all connected to espionage, aside from being
Our
writers.
agency is also connected to espionage. The original founder of our agency, which was Doris Halsey,
Hmm.
used to work. I think she was French resistance, maybe. I think
Wow.
that's what it was. But Kimberly has on our bookshelf at the agency a book about female, I think spies, World War II spies. And so I think Doris is in there. And so, yeah, so we have a little legacy there. And I think I did
Oh,
hear that about Julia also. That might have been what I ran across most recently about her, something like that. So
yes.
yeah.
Yes, and I think she was probably taller than both Ian Fleming and Roald Dahl. But so I think Julia was like 6'3". She was a very big
Yeah,
woman.
she's very tall.
Anyway, Liz, thanks so much for coming on the open mic. I always appreciate it. It's been too long since we've had you on. I hope folks out there were paying close attention through all of our little ramblings about stuff, but there's a lot of wisdom in everything that you've shared with folks here about agenting and the publishing industry, and the kind of maybe some do's and don'ts. But it's a tough game. You gotta have you gotta have all the information that you can possibly get to try to be successful doing this. The writing part of it is, oh, man, sometimes that doesn't even feel like the biggest part of it. It feels, I mean, you got to be a good writer, but there's so much more that comes with publishing. And so I hope folks learned something here today. And so thanks for coming on and sharing some insights with us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and just keep going, everybody. Keep at it.
Absolutely. So I will remind everybody again, if you haven't done so, please hit like, hit subscribe, all those good things. Tell a friend if you liked it. If you hated the show, don't tell anybody. Just keep it to yourself. But I hope you liked the show, and we'll be back next week. Well, I'm not sure next week. We'll be back with another episode sometime soon, with another great writer or somebody from the publishing industry to talk about what's going on in their world. Until then, I'll leave you with the thing that I always leave you with, which is this. Tomorrow is not promised to any of us, so please, whatever you do, make today count. So, for my guest, Liz Kroc, and myself, Rich Eisen, I will see you next time on the Open Mic.